Hi, and welcome to Career Mobility with James Mcilvena for November. It's the final one for 2024, James. Can you believe it?
Well, no and yes. So, yes, as in that I'm speaking to a lot of people, and it feels like it's been a big year for a
Yeah.
lot of different reasons. I think you look at some of the media reports about unused leave balances, and even within our own business, there's a lot of people, myself included, that in some ways feels like it's flown to November and it's gone in a blink of an eye, but the other time feel also a little bit worn out from what's been a pretty full-on year and very much looking forward to a break. So I think it's probably the common theme, but the year is far from done yet.
It is. And we've literally got, I don't know the exact days of countdown to Christmas, but it feels like about sort of 5 to 6 weeks. And there's a lot that can be achieved in that time, isn't there? Particularly from a mobility perspective. So it definitely isn't time to down tools yet, as they would say in the block, or tools down. This is all about picking those tools up and definitely going for it, because there are so many ways that you can actually have great conversations. There's great events. And sometimes it doesn't always look like we think it will. And I think that's one of the things that we want to talk about here today, is that there are many different ways to get out there and network. And not everything's going to be a direct kind of source to what you're looking for, but sometimes you have to be willing to kind of, I always call it the Hansel and Gretel effect, James, the sort of picking up the breadcrumbs and taking those with you until you get to the source that you do want. So what are your thoughts on the key ways of networking and sort of what can be great between now and Christmas?
Yeah, look, so I'll pick up on your first point and then I'll come to the great ways of networking. But of the discussions I've been having, so I was in New Zealand last week. We presented
Yeah.
an HR event, and I've had a range of discussions the week before and this week since I've been back. And I think that there is this common perception that, hey, pretty much you get to the last week of November, which just around the corner, and everyone packs up for the year, and there's no jobs out there, and it's all just about Christmas parties and see you later.
Yeah.
That is not the case. I have had multiple discussions in different industries where they've cited that their recruitment teams are surprisingly busy. It's come as a shock
Yeah.
to them. And after a year throughout which they've probably had less roles on, they're now a little bit shocked at where they find themselves. So, point number one, before I get into the other best way to use this time of year, is that I think there's a common misconception that this time of year isn't a good time of year and there's not opportunities out there, but there absolutely is. The
Yeah.
second part of your question was, the most critical things for networking. I mean, just when you think about the practicality and where I started that, not only are there still roles on, this is almost the time of year where people do set aside in their calendars a little bit more time for catch ups. I'm more open to a discussion with ex colleagues. And I was actually looking at some LinkedIn chatter the other day amongst some old colleagues, and they were remarking about their view on people who, when you reach out at this time of year, say, "Oh yeah, I'll see you in early 2025." It's like, well, hang on. It's still like, I don't know the exact number of days either, but there's still like a fair bit of this year to go. And so
Yeah.
people are much more open to saying, hey, end of year. It is often the case where people do make the additional effort. And it's
Yeah.
also an instance where they're probably in the city or in their offices connecting more often at this time of year. And so the
Mm.
ability to squeeze in a networking coffee or a lunch or a catch up, all of those things are probably more likely to happen in person throughout end of November and start of December than what maybe they are in August or a September. So
Yeah. That's a good point.
I would suggest that it starts by making that outreach. And then what's the most effective way? We always say this. Always have an agenda, always have a purpose when it comes to networking. Never just head in without a specific outcome. Um,
Yeah.
but it is a golden opportunity to reach out and say, hey, I'd love to check in with you and family, celebrate the year that's been, and have a discussion around and be specific with your purpose.
Yeah, it's actually, I was trying to think of a way of putting it, but like I know in Australia we call it silly season. I feel like we need to rename it because it's like it's a season where, like you say, people. I think we there is that thing of looking forward to the end of the year, catching up with family and friends. That's a really good prospect on the horizon for most people. And then obviously new year, new beginnings, etc. So what can we do in between times? And yeah, like you say, going in, there are events happening, there are still things, lots of things happening, but as you say, just squeezing in those meetings isn't as hard, or and even if they're virtual meetings, it doesn't matter. I think there's still a lot of value in that sort of interaction, but people seem to have that little bit more time and maybe headspace after fulfilling on a number of projects this year. We're all in that kind of sense of what we've achieved potentially, and even when you're in transition, this is a great time to be having conversations and picking up that information from people. I think that one of the things that I'm finding recently is, when you're having conversations with people, make sure you've got some questions, and as you said, purposeful things that you want to know. Find out about the job market. What's their experience been like? Be curious, I think, is probably the thing. Opportunity to really kind of ask some really great questions. So that's wonderful, James. Obviously I always talk about LinkedIn. I'll come on to that in a moment. You're going to say something there, we'll go back.
Yeah, no, before we get to LinkedIn, so I'm just thinking of how we can help people listening in as to what some of those questions might be. And so regardless of whether they run a Australian financial year or regardless of whether they run a calendar year, there are a couple of major events that I would be asking about during networking at the moment.
Brilliant.
So normally there is a degree of calendar year workforce planning done.
Yep.
So any indications around the 2025 strategy, and therefore how does that flow through to any workforce planning, which is the essence of identifying potential opportunity. Second, we find this is often the time of year. Maybe you change it from silly season to moving season, because this is actually often the time of year where people are doing, particularly those that run a calendar year, performance reviews, merit increases, bonus rounds. So, I know in a lot of industries between sort of February to April is when there's bonus payments made, which creates a lot of turnover. And I can tell you, if you're starting in February and the movements are starting to happen in February, you're too late. So you're going to be positioning now for potential resignations. And so are they aware of pockets in the business that are where there's a degree of unhappiness, or there might be some movement in the new year? And then
great question.
You've got strategy, workforce plan, potential areas that are less settled than what they normally are, and you start forming a picture of which connections are going to link me to those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's kind of almost like target account selling 101 right there. Understanding the lay of the land. I think also with recruiters, it's really about understanding what have they been recruiting, what do they see the new year looking like, what types of roles do they currently have on their books, even if they're not the ones that are specifically for you. That's absolutely fine. What sorts of things do they think could be happening? Is there anyone else that they would recommend that you're speaking to? There's so many things that you can find out. And I think, again, once you've got all of that intel, the next meeting you then go to, you take that all with you, because you've got that as those sort of little reminders. And it's like, oh, I've just heard this. Is that what you're finding? And it starts to really enrich those conversations as well. Brilliant. Awesome stuff. Yeah, no worries at all. So I mentioned LinkedIn. I always mention LinkedIn because, it's just one of those places you have to be. I always say if there were anywhere else, I'd suggest it. I was talking to someone the other day about the power of commenting on people's posts, and how, for me, I believe it's as powerful and strategically as productive as actually being in a networking room with someone and going up and shaking their hand, particularly if you tag them. What's interesting when I speak with people is obviously a number of people haven't used LinkedIn for a long time. Sometimes it wasn't something they were using previously in their role, or their organization weren't supporting that as an avenue to be present or sort of being active. It's so powerful, because then you're immediately having a conversation with those individuals. What are your thoughts on this, James? Because I know I find it incredibly powerful. What do you find?
Yeah, look, I think I couldn't agree more. And I'll try and bring it to life with, if we consider that you often get like a spectrum, and it starts from newbie user to expert user.
Yeah,
And if you're looking at that, newbie user would be, I'm going to thumbs up or celebrate or support said comment, right?
yeah,
Think about how that flows through from a personal brand perspective and visibility perspective if you're actively seeking new connections. No one
yeah.
sees it. You're like,
No,
you are one of a little number that people just look at against their post and go, oh, great, 32 people did some kind of reaction to said post, right?
yeah,
Your name doesn't come up. You're not specifically identified in any way. So I'm not saying don't do it. It's just super lazy. So don't expect any return
outcome.
on
Yeah,
that time, because you've really done nothing. Second, those prefabricated comments like congratulations TJ, because it's an announcement about a new role.
yeah,
Similarly, right? The prefabricated ones, a dime a dozen. Like there's often 7, 8 other people have commented with exactly the same thing. And look, it's the next step up, but it's almost as lazy as giving it a thumbs up, because it's very obvious that there's nothing unique, nothing of you in what's been contributed.
mm,
Next steps, commentary and thought out commentary. And it doesn't take much. Like, it is really incredibly simple just to put something that is
yeah,
a little bit more heartfelt, and third, or the next step up from that, is to actually contribute where it's not just congratulating someone on your new role, where it's actually something of yourself. So it's commentary about a
yeah,
point of view or belief that, watch out or be careful bit there is, like, avoid anything that's going to marginalize. But
yeah,
actually, if it's something you believe, it's not incredibly divisive. The ability to put forward something that you stand for is a tremendous opportunity in a comment. And then almost expert level is actually taking the time, the effort, and having the courage to publish and promote.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love what you just said there, James, as well, because it's like, when I think of even when you review someone's LinkedIn before you meet them. So I've been doing some research obviously about what's sort of in networking, and one of the things I saw was this idea of kind of at least doing a 60-second view of someone's LinkedIn before you meet them. I'd probably advise more like 5 minutes, but 60 seconds, if that's all you've got, it's still going to be helpful. What's really interesting is comments are the things that you actually get to hear that individual's voice. And like you say, if it is just purely congrats, it's nice because it's like being positive, but it doesn't give any of yourself. And I talk about this a lot as well. When in today's age, really post-COVID, I talk about that, we were always professionals before, and we had to be terribly professional in our corporate lives. Now we get to be people as well. And I feel like there's this kind of mesh of the two, and it's kind of, we can't pull them apart anymore. We are people, we are professionals. So we get to be professional people, but we get to be real. And I think, again, this is where when you read someone's LinkedIn and you get a sense of who they are from their point of view, their POV, from what they're saying in comments, or whether it is actually from articles they're writing, posts they're putting out there, etc., you already feel like you know them before you meet them. And I mean, take that a step further with video, you actually see them presenting, etc. So you can get another feel for them. You can hear their tone of voice. I'm a big one on sort of leaving voice notes, gone in 60 seconds, literally, but at least it's a little kind of, you hear the passion and emotion. So I love what you just said there, because it's like, it's you have to start somewhere. And I talk about it like building muscles. You have to build the muscles really of LinkedIn. I think react and comment, but also put yourself into the comment. That is a really powerful thing to do, because when someone then reviews your LinkedIn and looks at what you're up to, those are the things that come up, and they immediately get a sense of what you care about, how you speak to people, what sorts of things you comment on, what's important to you, and they get a sense of your feed and what you're up to. I think that's such a powerful thing. And again, if you've never done it before, that's fine, because it's like a blank canvas. Best place to start being creative. So then start bringing that to that. So yeah, I love what you said. I think that's great. There are these different levels, and you have to learn and walk through them.
Yeah, and one final point I add to that is if you've done the commentary and your point of view is aligned, and it's someone you don't already know, that's the perfect time to actually send them a less public message around potentially to catch up and align on ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great start point for a networking meeting.
Yeah, perfect. I always talk about it like battleships, James. It's like, you have to be on the radar. And I think when you actually comment on someone's post and you tag them, they know your name, even if John Smith is a regularly kind of like, I guess, name that a lot of people might have, it's still that, recognition. And then when you do reach out with a connect note, and as you say, have that more private conversation, it's like, oh, I actually remember this person. They actually, sort of commented on my post, or maybe a couple of posts or whatever. Perfect. It creates less awkward opportunity. It's much better, and it's less awkward.
Yeah. And for people like you and I with slightly more complicated surnames, it's like almost instant recognition. But it's not just the follow-up. It's even just if your application comes across their desk, right? And there's,
Exactly.
I wonder if that's the same person.
Yeah.
It is absolutely about making sure that you become more recognizable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, I am also not saying that in-person events aren't powerful. I think they're incredibly powerful. I think the tough thing sometimes, though, with in-person events is unless you are aware of who's going, and you can be very strategic about who you want to meet in advance, which doesn't always happen and doesn't often happen, serendipity takes hold and you meet who you meet, because there's only a finite amount of time, etc. Again, can be incredibly powerful, and I believe in serendipity. I think sometimes that can create some really great things, but also that sense of strategy and being able to be very specific really can help as well. So I think, again, just the mix of the two, there's nothing quite like meeting people in person.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, just pick up on that, or was that a in-person event last week? In-person events are incredibly useful, right? But with the in-person events, actually, a lot of the time, the person that you might want to connect with and speak to might well be someone who's promoted on the list as presenting. They're there, they present, they leave, because that was the only reason for attending. They're not there as an attendee, they're there as a presenter, and so you're not going to connect with them. And secondly, the in-person events are almost like what the interview is to the job application. The in-person events is like the interview where you've actually got the opportunity, and yeah, maybe there's serendipity, maybe you meet exactly the right person you wanted at those events. At the very least, you meet a couple of people that you're aligned with. But the online, the LinkedIn component is like the applications. And if you're not doing enough of the first, you're probably not going to maximize the second.
That's such a great, I love that analogy. That's wonderful. Now, I was thinking as well, one of the other things that I think is really important in this season is a lot of people that we have in programs obviously are in things like job search work teams or executive job search work teams. They're out finding out all this great information. I really want to kind of just highlight that it's so important. Sometimes, as I say, I know a lot of people will network and kind of go, look, it's not productive. I'm not getting what I need from that networking. Bring that back to the table, because you'll be surprised when you actually are speaking to other job seekers who they've also spoken to, that for them wasn't necessarily the nugget of gold they needed, but it is your nugget of gold. So that sharing of information is so powerful. And I know it's a really big part of why we believe if you're speaking with other job seekers, and that's why those environments are so helpful, can be just, that can be where the magic happens.
Yeah, look, and not only is it about sharing the information from networking, I would challenge anyone who is coming back to those tables and saying, hey, networking's not working for me, to actually share what happened and ask for whether it's their coach, whether it's colleagues, whether it's friends, whether it's job search work team members, whoever it is. It's not the activity of networking that will be at fault. It's either the way it's being done, or it's the lack of intent, or it's not asking the right questions, or it's you've forced a meeting with someone who's not the right person and you needed more background or more research before taking the more senior meeting. Or you could have done that research yourself, or there's a myriad. Like, it is so individual as to why it is or is not working. The takeout of all of that is share what you've learnt with others freely, take on feedback for how you're networking to maximize the efficiency of it.
Yeah, look, again, I couldn't agree more. I just think there's, you know, it's one of those things where, again, I think it's frustrating for people when they don't get exactly what they want necessarily information-wise. But I think, you know, as we spoke about earlier, when you're asking really great questions, you're getting really great intel. And again, when you bring that back to the table, you'll be surprised who that can help. And I think sometimes that reciprocity is a really big part of networking. It's kind of how you can share. You know, if you're willing to share, other people will share with you. It's just how humans work.
Yeah, and when in doubt, always go to the Hail Mary, which is getting people to talk about themselves, which normally is the one golden rule. And so I actually often share a lot in just getting them to talk about themselves rather than working through a predetermined list of questions. But again, this is all part of the unpacking what's going on for that individual and getting advice on sharing how they're approaching it and being open to listening to what's effective with other people. And maybe you're doing too much talking. Maybe you're straight into the list of things you want to find out from that person. They're going, oh, hang on. Yeah, it's just a media interview. Like, it doesn't feel like a network. You like share and learn, and then you're going to get much more benefit.
Yeah, that's a really great one. And in fact, something you said earlier made me think also just about mindset. One of the things that I talk about very much is in gaining momentum in job search, really have like a, you know, look after yourself, because you're the most important person in the job search process. So if you're looking after yourself, there's a good chance, one, you're going to go in with a better attitude for one, but also you're going to be feeling really good about yourself. And I think that's important, because then you can kind of, you know, be complete over here and have a great conversation with the other person. I think when you know, the conversations I have sometimes is people potentially aren't looking after themselves, because job search can be a lot. You know, we know that particularly in this market. So when you feel good, you're going to have great conversations. And again, you're not always going to get the right intel for you, but it's going to help someone. And that's what it's about. And that's why also sharing sometimes on LinkedIn, for example, you'd be amazed how you can become the magnet for people. And they're like, I actually want to talk to you because it's really interesting what you're speaking about. And I'm getting a sense of what you care about as a result of what you're sharing, which is really powerful. Yeah.
It's sales technique 101, right? Like, it's, yeah, you're not going to sell much if you've got a frown on your face versus if you've got a smile on your face and a positive attitude. If you're slumped over in a dark room wearing a tracksuit, you know, you're not feeling, or that's going to come across in the way you communicate. And so, and this, I'm talking virtually here. This is making the effort to make sure that your headspace is actually where it needs to be. And then you combine that with the approach, you get those two things right, and it's amazing how all of a sudden you'll see the benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the other thing we wanted to talk about before we wrap for 2024, because obviously we're heading into December, we won't be doing any sessions in December or January. We'll be back in Feb. But in December and running into December, there is a lot that we'll be doing at LHH to support anyone that's in career transition with us. Lots of events are happening. One of them I can talk about is the Global Connect Forum. So that's actually happening, a virtual event that happens. You can attend events globally around the world. So if you are thinking international mobility or you're interested in global companies, there'll be lots of sessions. So keep your eyes very, very close to the LHH Career Studio. Lots of information will be going into there. Locally here in Australia, I know for sure, because I'm organising it, there's at least one event happening so far, but I'm happy to organise and will be organising more. So again, keep your eyes on that. The one that's already in there is actually with a tech company who's called Scalar. So they'll be talking about some of the tech opportunities that they're working on at the moment. I'm going to put an invite out, though, in this session, because it's going to go out today. If there is anybody you would love to see presenting, please let me know for Australia, New Zealand, and I'll very happily go and see if I can make those connections and magic happen, so that we can have those guys presenting for us at the beginning of December. So that's the 2nd to the 6th of December. Anything else you'd like to talk about in terms of the wrap up for 2024, James?
No, I think it was the final thing I'll add is the concept you and I were talking about and preparing for before, which was around the ability to take yourself out of the comfort zone. I believe the terminology was to go and play in traffic, right?
Indeed.
So it's
Yeah.
it's to try something a little bit different, shake it up. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like a long, dour, drawn out process of, you know, the same thing. So we just talked about shaking it up in your approach and getting feedback.
Yeah.
But maybe for December, you know, maybe this is where we do get back to silly season. Try something. Try something silly. Try something like that you haven't done before as to a
Yeah.
way you're going to connect with people for two reasons. You know, one, you just might find that it's the best thing you've ever done in regards
Yeah.
to getting a result. But two, you're keeping things fresh and interesting for yourself because trying the same thing, the same approach, the same way again and again and again just gets tiring. And almost to wrap where we started, for a lot of people, it's been sort of a long year. Most people, this is not only the individuals in transition, but also the people they're talking to, because to talk to customers, I think a lot of people are saying, hey, I'm just looking forward to a break now. Actually, something fresh, new, and novel right now might just be the type of thing that it needs to create a spark.
I think the thing on that as well, and I thought when you talk about wrapping, it makes me think of presents, which is a great finish for Christmas. But it's, you know, that idea of, being memorable is great. And I think a lot of people are almost a little bit uneasy with being memorable. And again, it's kind of an interesting quandary because, you know, when we think of the people that we're influenced by or some of the things that we're interested in, like do memorable in a way that is authentic for you, going back to the commenting, and, you know, be you. Don't attempt to be someone else. You know, be really clear about what's important to you, what your skills are, what makes you different, because the fact is everyone is different, and that's awesome. That's what we want to bring, our special sauce, in that sort of way of being, and yeah, just present yourself, but be memorable. I think it's so important in being visible in today's job market and as a professional in today's market generally.
Yeah, and almost everyone has some kind of plan, whether it's getting together for Christmas, how they're spending New Year's,
Yeah.
a lot of leave taken this time of year, like as a connection point. It's a great way to build that into a discussion to get to know individuals or people you're networking with on a personal level as well as a professional one.
I'm going to put it out there right now that I would love people to share how they're going to, make their Christmas networking memorable. Like, what are you going to do this year to be for it to be memorable for you, but also so for you to be memorable to others? That would be an amazing feedback loop. So I'm going to, as I pop this into the group, into the LinkedIn group, if you feel to comment on that and let us know what you're thinking you could do, or if you're looking for ideas, that again, if people share, that's going to get other people thinking about what they could do. So thank you so much, Jane, for all of the sessions this year. It's been amazing. I hope you have an amazing Christmas. You and I have got still a lot of work to do running up to the Christmas break, but really appreciate all of your great ideas and everything that you've shared this year. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Have a fantastic break, TJ.
Will do. Cheers, James.
Bye.